again. This is part 7 of the Accreditation 360 series that started out as an idea of doing one and now has turned into every 2 weeks for us doing these and with no end in sight, really. Welcome, everybody. We appreciate you showing up today. I want to welcome our guest here, Sue McLaughlin and Edwin Lofton, who should be very familiar faces by now. It's kind of hard to believe this. So this being 7 means we're 14 weeks post the announcement of Accreditation 360, which means we're getting darn close to when the time to be compliant with Accreditation 360 is going to actually happen. It also means we're getting close to Christmas for those of you who hadn't done any Christmas shopping yet, like myself. But anyway, I shouldn't say that yet because we haven't even gotten to Halloween yet, but we're darn close to Halloween. So anyway, before I forget, if you're one of our Accreditation Readiness Network members, don't forget you can get your CECs for this. I always forget that until the end of the video. So at least today I got it up front. So today we're going to talk about primarily emergency management because there's been some changes where it landed in the manual and in the survey process guide and all those things. And we're very fortunate that Sue is one of the experts in emergency management, especially from a codes and standards perspective, having been on NFPA 1600 for a while, right? Sue, I don't know how many years.
1600, and now I'm still on 99. The Technical Committee for Emergency Management and Security.
Yeah, so for those that aren't NFPA people, those are the codes that drive a lot of the emergency management requirements for both CMS and then kind of somewhat been used by Joint Commission as well. So very knowledgeable there, and of course Edwin and his background both as a chief nursing officer and being down in Florida, having many opportunities as us and myself on the East Coast of North Carolina gets to activate emergency management like this weekend. Anyway, so it's great. So let's talk about, first of all, so you want to kind of just frame up a little bit of the emergency management changes over the last few years and kind of where we landed.
Right. Just a brief kind of history, and I've been involved in this field since the beginning of this history, pretty much. But Joint Commission, initially had emergency management contained within the Environment of Care chapter. They changed the standards after 9/11. They changed the standards after Hurricane Katrina. That was when emergency management became a separate chapter. And now, they changed them most recently again after COVID. And so we've got this history of every time that there is a major disaster, it seems that we get changes in the standards. Well, now with the A360 standards, the question is what's changed there? And the answer is basically nothing has changed except the position of the standards. So we're looking at yet another shift in the standards, but in terms of what actually needs to be done, there's nothing new. If we can talk a little bit about the shift in the standards and what that means. Basically, we still have an emergency management chapter in the A360 standards. Now, when I read through that chapter the first time, and I read the standards, they're standards that have always been there, but notably, they did not include any of the standards that they added post-COVID. All the things that were kind of above and beyond weren't in that EM chapter. And I'm going, wow, why did they go backwards on this? Well, if you read a little further and go into the NPG chapter, you'll find a lot of, um, or you will find all of the things, the leadership things that were removed from the EM chapter. So everything that you've done before continues. You just have to look in two different places for the standards. So in EM 09, which is the emergency management chapter, you still have, or yes, you still have the program under EM 09. EM 11 is the hazard vulnerability analysis. 12 is the emergency operations plan and all the plans that support the emergency operations plan. EM 13, the continuity of operations plan. EM 15, training and education. EM 16 is the exercises, and EM 17 is the evaluation of the program. So that's the gist of what we had before COVID. And after COVID, then everything that changed the emphasis and put some emphasis on leadership was gone. So everything else goes to NPG 03. And the reason for that is that under A360, the Joint Commission is really focusing on the CMS conditions of participation. And so what we have in the EM chapter is rooted in the CMS COPs. But everything that got moved to the NPG chapter is over and beyond CMS expectations. Now, Edwin, I'll let you talk a little bit about that and with respect to the NPG chapter.
Well, thank you, Sue. And that's a very good beginning summary of what's happening within EM, emergency management, and NPG, the national performance goals. What, as Sue and I have talked about in the past, what we discovered in the movement of the leadership emphasis to NPG is consistent with what we found in the other A360 modules. Steve, you and I and Monica spoke about this last time, that we are seeing some consistencies. And so, as Sue said, in NPG 030101, it is about the leadership oversight and support of emergency management. It's about that leadership will allocate resources. You move to NPG 0302, and it's about how leadership assures an all hazards approach. While the EM chapter says the emergency management plan is all hazards, this says leadership. So 11 of the standards and the multiple EPs that follows are pulled out of EM and restated with the leadership emphasis. So as we have seen historically, as this review continues, the Board of Governance, the Board of Directors, and the executive team has the ultimate accountability. And the wording, again, very consistently, when you get down to NPG 0306, is that the leadership evaluates the EM effectiveness and efficiencies. So again, when you pull out the tent and do the decontamination with your EM team, multidisciplinary team, that's great and fine and dandy. But does the board of directors and the executive team understand how well it did or did not work, and how did they plan additional resources to assure improvement in emergency management processes?
Yeah, and that's going to be a bit of a challenge, right? Because so we're in episode 7. I don't know if we're in these episodes or whatever. This video 7, and in every one of them, we've talked about how much more involvement leadership's going to have, but understanding how little time, particularly a board of directors or a board of trustees, would have to focus on some of these things. How we message that is going to be really important. And so, one of the things we got loud and clear from the folks, and, we'd love to hear from those folks who are on the call today, if you have interest in this, that we're putting together some videos specifically aimed at leadership. But one of the things I think we want to talk about is how you message that succinctly enough so that they get the information that they need and can take action, but without also bombarding them and overwhelming them with stuff they don't have time to listen to, if that makes sense. But
Well, that
um,
and Steve, to your point, that's very good. That's where an efficient and effective performance improvement plan, whether you're using Lean Six Sigma, whether you're using Baldrige criteria, using a modeled plan for performance improvement, so that you can whittle down to that one key thing that the board of directors needs to understand for how well it's working, what resources need to be added, whether it's fiscal responsibility or a communication to the community to participate in the community all hazards approach.
that's great. Yeah. So, so kind of thinking through some of the other stuff here, we've got this new survey process guide, 600 plus pages. What are there some resources there that might help in terms of understanding what's changed but not changed in
But
emergency
not
management?
changed, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The survey process guide for hospitals, and I believe it's also there for critical access hospitals, is available online, free of charge from Joint Commission. It is, 600 plus pages long, as Steve said, so you're certainly not going to want to read this cover to cover unless you're looking for some good bedtime reading, I guess. But anyway, it's a free download, and it really you can search on it too, so you can easily find the items in there that relate to emergency management in this case, and of course other things as well. It really goes through all of the EM standards and has a little note with them. It's kind of a table, really. It gives the um, module that you're looking at for emergency management, and then it gives you the standard, and it gives you how they're going to evaluate it with document review or with the EM interview, which the EM interview is definitely going to still occur. So that's worthwhile. And the EM evaluation model starts on page 397 of that survey process guide. So it goes through the whole thing with the interview, with the questions, and so on and so forth. The interview process really asks leadership a lot of questions. They're going to ask leadership to describe the program. They're going to ask leaders to identify the hazards that are found in the hazard vulnerability analysis, those that are higher rated and so forth. They're going to be asked to describe the patient populations that are served and the patient and staff tracking services that are provided. And let's see, what else? Evacuation transport, how that's going to be managed, delegation of authority, roles in the exercises and so forth, and collaboration with state and local emergency response agencies. So that's quite a detailed list, and they're expecting leadership to be conversant on all of these issues. So that's going to be an interesting process to see how that plays out. And as Edwin was describing, the importance of involving leadership in the emergency planning. I am aware that when they did the rewrite post-COVID and they formed a expert panel to update the emergency management standards at that time, that they were concerned about leadership involvement in the program for support of the program financially, as well as in actuality, in an emergency operations plan. So there's a whole lot of leadership in there, and you really want to look at that survey process guide to do that. Um, they also have a compliance tool for the emergency management document review in the survey process guide. That starts on page 575. And again, it just kind of walks through what they're going to look at in the documents and so on and so forth. So that's really valuable information to have and to use as you're preparing for a Joint Commission survey, specifically in emergency management.
So, do you think they're going to be addressing or assessing is a better word for this, the leadership's involvement and knowledge during the EM interview session, a leadership discussion, or both?
Well, I don't know about the leadership discussion. I do believe they're going to be doing this during the EM interview. So that's going to be a very important process, and I think perhaps raised in profile from what it was, what they were doing before.
A suggestion I would have for organizations, and this is an Edwin suggestion, Steve can shoot it down if he wants to, is with your multidisciplinary emergency management team, have them prepare to talk about how leadership is involved, how leadership is informed. If you take a proactive measure in a Joint Commission survey or a CMS survey and demonstrate your knowledge of the importance of leadership. Leadership has provided X resources. Leadership identified for us this patient population. Leadership has provided the education and participated in the evaluation. That type of language will help assure that the 360 communication loop is occurring and may decrease other questions in the leadership session or in on-site reviews.
Yeah, no, I don't know why I'd shoot that down at all. I think it's a great suggestion all the way around. I mean, I think to me, it's nice, and I think it's a good step that they're pushing leadership to be a little bit more accountable here. Not that they haven't been in the past. It's always interesting. You haven't done this for a long time now. You can tell the organizations who've been down the road of a true activation, not a test one, but a real one that was meaningful, because leadership team tends to be very involved at that point because they've been through it and they understand. And now, and I don't know that I think you can codifying that involvement is one thing, living it and it being an experienced based involvement is another, but you got to start somewhere, right? And I think this is a step in the right direction. So, from a leadership perspective, I doubt we have any that are tuning in today, but we might, have some C-suite people or folks that are going to watch it, after we post it. Any recommendations you have is how to get involved and understand more about what their roles are going to be in EM?
So I'm sure you have some as well. I go back to my experiences, as Steve said, being in Florida and being an incident commander many times. And then I was incident commander for 3 years solid during our lovely COVID experience. It is really having the EM team having a direct line to the CEO, and when possible, to key members of the board of governance or board of directors. I would routinely have direct communications with our chairman of our board. At our board quality committees, we would always, every month, we would have a minute or two related to EM, whether it's weather preparedness, whether it's flood recognition, whether it's fire, whether it's a pandemic, whatever it was, so that they were well versed. And then that also gave them tools to respond to the community when the community had questions. And our chairman of the board of directors made himself very available to the public. So he and I had an open dialogue that made him very comfortable in responding to the community, to the media. And then he also would reference them to come and speak to me. So again, it's a simple leadership trick: open, clear, consistent communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just remind folks that this really isn't new, because in the current standards, the first couple of standards in the EM chapter are leadership does this, leadership does that, and so on and so forth. I do know in my experience in working with hospitals that a lot of hospital leadership, a significant amount, let's say, has not taken that to heart and really understood that they are critical, uh, or their involvement is critical in the emergency management program. And so it's not that this is new, but now with the move to A360 in the NPG chapter, and everything is leadership does this, leadership does that. You know, it's still there. It was there before, but we still, as an industry, need to work on that.
Yeah. You would think after the pandemic, nationally we would have a pretty good handle on it, but you know, time time erases a lot of memories. And there's been a lot of
Yeah,
turnover, frankly. I mean, let's face it, a
yeah.
lot of folks that the pandemic was a launch point for a lot of retirements in leadership and in a lot of positions, frankly. So um, awesome. So, what other thoughts do you guys have, or ideas about emergency management going forward? I thought it was interesting. You mentioned the survey process guide being 600 plus pages, and we recently had a discussion with the Joint Commission and got some feedback from them. And one of the things that stood out to me in that discussion was they never intended for anyone to read that from cover to cover. The idea was it would be a tool and they would navigate, like you said, you can search through it and
Mhm.
navigate through it. And that was the first time that we heard them say they don't really expect. But I would, the truth is, if you're the person that's out there in the hospital that's the pivot person for accreditation, you probably are going to read most of those 600 plus pages, I would think. But
It, it's it has a high value. I like the way that and Sue mentioned this in the grid makeup of the survey process guide. It aligns the CMS COP, the Joint Commission standard, and then how the document review aligns across the page. So there is a lot of value in spending some time, maybe some sleepless nights, really understanding that, like you said, by the pivot person.
yeah, you thought, Sue, like you were
I
about
think
to
we
say
covered
something.
it.
So awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think they did a good job with this. It's going to be really interesting to see it roll out here. We're just, 3 months away, not even 3 months away from it being a reality now. Um, so it seems like it's going to be, uh, they keep saying there's nothing new, nothing's changed. You do the same thing, but there's going to be a difference. Um, it's obvious that there's going to be a difference. And they even admitted that the idea was to reduce the burden on the hospital, but they realized that right now the burden is very much increased as we're going through this transition. And so we're trying through these videos and these discussions and all the other things we do to try to reduce that burden as much as possible. And, we're doing what we can to digest these standards and give you our opinions and thoughts and recommendations on how to prepare, especially if you're one of those first quarter, the blessed ones, that's flight test this bad boy. Can't wait for that to get started. But appreciate both of you. This one's going to be a little bit shorter today than we thought about. 25 minutes or so, but we'd love to get your feedback from the folks that are on. Feel free to send us something in the chat, email us anytime. If you go to our website, mslhealthcare.com, you can sign up and watch all of the previous 6 plus this one once it gets posted in a few days. Again, if you're an RN member, you can get CECs for that. So don't miss that opportunity. And we appreciate you being here. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Edwin. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, if not before.
Thanks.
Thanks.